All right, this is going to be our second read through today. Chapter 800. No. 154, I think. Really? Are we not on 855? New visitor? What? Wait. Let me do my intro. This is our second stream today. We're going to be reading more Lord of the Mysteries, so you know what we're here to read. So if you like what you see, check your VOD. I know I'm going to go back in my own VOD. If you like what you're going to see, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And I am on 8. Wow. Okay. I hate how I do that. Every time I put myself, I'm gonna read one more chapter, I always put it in my thumbnail. We're still doing our intro, but look, I put until 8. I put 837 through 844. For some reason, bro, really a forgetful done. I literally read this like 3 hours ago. I even put in my thumbnail 844, and then I put in my description 853. What? I gotta fix this. I'm sorry. One sec. But chapter 854. I know. It's scary, dude. 854 is called Confession. Are you guys ready? Anything you guys need to confess? Now, time to confess. Did you guys really read all of Lord of Mysteries in 2 months? Or did you guys look up chapter summaries? It is time to confess. Let me do my timestamp before I forget. I read it in like 2 weeks. That is so wild. Some of you guys read it in less than a month, and I'm over here taking almost like a year. Chapter 854 is called Confession. 1.5 months. Damn, no summers. Damn. Holy fool, dude. Chapter 800. All right. I'm not gonna call cap. All right, you guys are wild. That's crazy. Huge respect, man. You guys are over here like no. You guys, no wonder you guys are pissed off at me, telling me to stop stalling, dude. You guys read this shit in like a month or two, and I'm over here taking it over a year at this point. Chapter 854 is called Confession. Early morning, 160 Bookland Street. After Klein got out of bed and washed up, he didn't rush over to leave the bathroom. He took 4 steps counterclockwise and headed above the gray fog. He then conjured the world Gurmit Sparrow and made the fake person pray piously. Honorable Mr. Fool, please pass on the message to the Nits. I need him to provide me information on West Ballum. It's best if he includes his social connections. Also get him to be careful of the Church of the Evernight for the time being. Above the golden dream, the Nits, who saw the sun earlier than Backland, was holding a cup of malt beer as he sat in the shadows, hiding away from the vile sunlight. Lessons will begin in another 15 minutes. Captain has said that a treasure hunter must have a sufficiently good grasp of the mathematics. Sigh, this is really such a headache, but it's also something to look forward to. Dogshit. The Nits placed the hands on his knees as he lowered a mouthful of beer. No, 6 months. I started watching you mid-volume 4. Oh, no way, Bullseye. Oh, that's crazy. So you started watching me around this point. Mid-volume 4. At this point, the gray fog animated in front of him. The blurry figure that looked down from above appeared as the Nit's ears resounded with Gurmit Sparrow's voice. Information on West Ballum. Although we've been there to search for lost ancient treasure and got to know a few tribunal natives, that is pretty much it. There won't be... Well, let me fix my mic. No, my mouse. There won't be much that I can't tell him about. This is troublesome. I'll have to do some sort of work again. Why does Gurmit Sparrow get involved in so many things? And it silently grumbled as he vigilantly glanced to his sides, afraid that the madman would appear suddenly. He drew a breath upon considering how he wanted to become stronger. He didn't wish to be of no help when his captain met with danger. Having to shamefully hide at the back, the Nits slapped his face a few times with his free hand before standing up. Fucking the Nits, dude. Will she be suspicious if I directly ask Captain, making her believe that I had a secret and am secretly working for someone else? But I have no idea where that fellow Anderson has gone. Dogshit. The Nits fell into dilemma as he couldn't help but think about something else, recalling Gurmit Sparrow's last words. Be careful of the Church of the Evernight. The Nits wasn't a fool. He knew that the matter that the crazy adventure emphasized was something important. It also meant that he believed that he had a high chance of being an important target of the Church of the Evernight. He would be wildly pursued by the Red Gloves. Apart from the Church of the Evernight, the Church of Storms, the military are targeting me as well. It said that they have each sent a squad. The Nits thought as his heart palpitated. He soon revealed a puzzled and bitter look as he muttered to himself, but I haven't done anything. After passing a message about gathering information on West Ballum to Admiral of Stars Cat Leah, Klein left the area above the gray fog and returned to the real world. Like every other day, he had his breakfast and had lessons. After he woke up from his afternoon nap with Richardson's help, he changed into a formal suit for an excursion. He got into the carriage that had already been waiting for him at the door. Head to St. Selma Cathedral. Klein leaned on the carriage wall as he instructed the carriage driver. How many orcs are there hunting the Nits now? Everybody, dude. He had decided to continue maintaining his identity as... Can you tell that I finally calmed down after reading that last part, dude? Last stream was just way too much. Look, can you tell that I finally been able to calm down and, like, breathe in? Can you tell? Like, it's like night and day from the last chapter I read, man. He had decided to continue maintaining his identity as Dwayne Dantes. He believed that it was best if he didn't change into his former persona. Therefore, he couldn't change the frequency of his trips to St. Samuel Cathedral, nor could he donate less. Besides, this can be effectively wipe away any suspicions they have on me. After all, it's hard to imagine that the criminal who infiltrated Chandis Gate hadn't stayed behind, but the world sauntered into the cathedral as though nothing had happened. I'll have to thank Emperor Rizal for not plagiarizing criminal psychology. He didn't point out the intelligent criminal often returning to their crime scene to admire that their work and their helplessness response of the others. Klein mumbled inwardly as he took a sip of the black tea of Richardson had brew. Klein, okay, but not Klein, but immediately Klein either. After moisturing his throat, he glanced at his valet and asked seemingly casually, "What is your deepest impression of East and West Ballum?" Sitting beside him, Richardson didn't ask. After some thought, he said, "East Ballum is safer, West Ballum is more chaotic." After giving a simpler answer, Richardson turned to look at his employer, only to see Dwayne Dantes with his half eyes closed as though he wanted him to continue. Richardson scratched his ear and deliberated over his few words. There are many poverty, hunger, and whip abuse. People from East and West Ballum originally worshipped death. Later, due to the perks of believing in the deities like the goddess Lord of Storms and Eternal Blazing Sun, allowing them to boost their statuses and receive protection from the cathedral, there was a large-scale change of fate. However, as the number of believers increased, that special status was quickly removed. The people of the lower class began worshipping death again in secret. It's more obvious for more measy West Ballums in regards to the point that descendants of death often receive a great deal of support. This is why my father mine occasionally mentions after he's drunk. Klein listened in silence and didn't stop his valet's recount, nor did he probe deeper. Wait, who's dad? Who's saying this? This is what my father mine occasionally mention after he's drunk. Klein listened. Oh, Klein is listening in silence, and he didn't stop his valet recount, nor did he probe deeper. Soon the carriage arrived outside St. Samuel Cathedral. Klein first took in the sight of the white flying pigeons before entering the prayer hall. He took off his hat and handed it together with his cane and Richardson. Wow, I'm losing my voice, man. Last stream was just way too crazy. Doesn't sound good. He randomly found a seat and looked at the altar into darkness. He watched the stars and the dark sacred emblem as unease, embarrassment, and a lack of confidence arose in him. If he had guessed correctly, ever since he made contact with the holy sword and made a vow, the goddess had likely taken notice of him. Every time he entered the cathedral to pretend like he was praying, it had the feeling like Emperor's new clothes. I wonder what the goddess' opinion on this is, and what position is the church taking, huh? I'll probe first. Klein clasped his hands as he held it to his nose, looking as though he was praying seriously. After about 8 minutes, he slowly got up, walked to the donation box, took out 50 pounds, and piously threw it in. After doing that, Klein turned to the confessional along the sides of the hall and entered. Unlike most ancient confessionals, which were big wooden crates with 2 doors, the modern confessional was an independent, spacious compartment. The confessor and the listening bishop were separated by a wooden partition, with each one of them having their seats. Using the dim light, Klein sat on the chair and listened to the bishop say with his mellow voice, "Do you have something you would like to say? The goddess cares about all her believers." Klein raised his hand and tapped the chest 4 times in a clockwise fashion. "Praise the lady. I wish to confess that 2 days ago the military came to me, wishing that I can sell a batch of firearms and cannons to West Ballum to add coal to the chaos there." After he said that, the bishops on the other side didn't merely give him any answer, as though he was alarmed by the arms dealing. He was momentarily unsure as to how to organize his words. Hermes pretty good, but not mysterious enough. The confessional instantly ended up being wrapped in an awkward silence. You became frightened just from that. Have you never encountered a confessor as frank as me? Frank, okay. If I were to say that I'm currently plotting the murder of a demigod while hiding from the mother tree of desire and the true creator, wouldn't you be jumping up? Klein laughed as he continued. I did enjoy the adventurous life when I was young. I obtained my wealth through metal, blood, and fire, but I'm already sick of that life. I only wish for a peaceful future. What a good man. I originally wanted to decline the offer, but I'm unable to overcome the greed in my heart. Okay, this is sufficiently enticing business, and it helps me in obtaining a firm foot in Backlum's high society. I confess that I ultimately chose the bustle and chaos. The bishop on the other side finally had a response. As he said with a gentle voice, don't be afraid, don't waver. You don't have to feel guilt for a certain level of greed. As long as you don't harm the innocent or commit any of the crimes written in the Bible, go follow your inner heart and make the choice you wish to make the most. Only this way can you truly understand the teachings and understand the truth of those words. There's no need to put in a difficult position. Remember this, no matter what you do, sincerely being contrite and penitent is worthy of praise and forgiveness. May the goddess bless you. Praise the lady. Klein drew the crimson moon once again on his chest. His visit to St. Simon Cathedral was to use the opportunity of a confession to inform the church of his intentions of engaging in arms dealing. He wanted to know their reaction so as to pry into the goddess's attitude towards him. Okay, that's smart. That's why he did it. Without saying anything extra, Klein slowly got up and left the confessional. He walked down the aisle and went towards his valet, Richardson. At this moment, he saw a lady sitting in the corner of the prayer hall. She was wearing a hooded black robe. Madame Dally. Come on. Come on. Come on. She's watching him now. With blue eyeshadows and blush, it's Madame Dally. She had quite an uncanny sense of beauty. She was none other than the spirit medium Madame Dally. Oh, let's go, dude. Dally looked up and similarly noticed Dwayne Dantes. Her expression momentarily turned adrift as though she had fallen asleep while praying as... This is so good. No way is she going to figure it out now. As though she had fallen asleep while praying and had entered a dream. Klein nodded as he indiscriminately as a polite gesture. Then he took his hat and cane from Richardson as he unhurriedly walked out of the hall. Dally retracted her gaze as she looked down at the few in front of her, but before slowly closing her eyes. Walking out same side of the cathedral, Klein stood by the side of the staircase and paused for 2 seconds. The 2 white pigeons suddenly flew up and square up ahead, blocking the sights of all who were taking in the scene. Less than 30 minutes later, in the basement, Leonard heard that Dwayne Dantes, who had previously been investigated, was about to cooperate with the officials. He was going to be a merchant who would sell the arms to West Balham. What is he trying to do? Leonard frowned, little by little, completely at a loss as to what the undying monster's thoughts were. Look at that. The Undying. What a good title drop, dude. What the heck? Next chapter, New Visitor. All right. Chapter 855 is called New Visitor. As he returned from St. Samuel Cathedral to 160 Buckland Street, Klein saw his white-gloved butler, Walter, walk up to him. Sir, someone delivered a name card. He said that his employer wishes to visit you from 4 to 5. Walter said, have you finished JJK? I have not finished I haven't finished it. I unchecked out of JJK so badly, bro. I did not like where the series was going. Oh, like, these opponents are way too hard, and, like, I already know how they're gonna, like, finish it, and I was like, I don't like where it's going, so I haven't read it yet, but I can look. Season 2, bro. I gotta pause the video. I'm sorry. I'm gonna just keep reading before I get mad. If you guys want to know what we're talking about, check out the live stream. But chapter 855. As he returned from St. Simon Cathedral to 160 Buckland Street, Klein saw his white glove butler Walter, that's a tongue twister. Butler Walter walked up to him. Sir, someone delivered a name card. He said that his employer wishes to visit you from 4 to 5. Walter said with a staid expression. Klein tried figuring out who the visitor was, but he had no clue. He nodded gently and said, who's the employer? Walter darted his gaze around and saw that the other servants were rather far away. He then replied, Baron Sindras. Baron Sindras, the millionaire tycoon who obtained his aristocratic title with the help of the Conservative Party and Duke Negan. And it is also one of the most famous bankers and entrepreneurs in the kingdom. I previously helped Mam Mary purchase the Coin Company shares. The competitor happened to be him and his friends. He's visiting me personally for this matter. It's only a transaction worth about £13,000. That is a lot of money. It shouldn't be someone that requires him to get this far. As Klein mind raised, he walked to the staircase that led to the second floor. Walter walked half a step behind him as he said, Sir, if you don't wish to meet Baron Sindras, I'll inform him that you got caught up in St. Samuel Cathedral listening to the bishop's preachings and might return very late. In between the lines, the butler was saying that the Baron Sindras was a believer of the Lord of Storms. It's impossible for him to head directly to St. Samuel Cathedral to seek him out. Klein thought and smiled before gently saying, This is a noble who has immense influence in the banking industry. I'll definitely come across him in the future, so I have to meet him. Like badass quality for me. Arranged the meeting to be at the small living room on the second floor where the where there's the most sunlight. According to what Klein knew, Baron Singers was the third largest shareholder in Backland Bank and the largest shareholder of the Salval People's Bank and the Lowen Kingdom's banking industry, who was definitely one of the few people with a great influence. Yes, sir, Walter didn't nag on. At 4:10, Klein met the visitor who often appeared on the papers in the predetermined living room. The only thing that was different and devastated from his exceptions was that Backland turned cloudy after 3. The weather had turned dark and beginning drizzling. It didn't bring in the bright and warm sunrise. Baron Singers was identical to how he looked on the papers. He had black hair mixed with some white hair that was neatly combed backwards, revealing his broad forehead and receding hairline. His face was rather round, but it lacked the flesh needed to support his cheekbones were rather high and his wrinkles were obvious. Unlike most Loweness his age, Baron Singers didn't have any facial features. He was clean-shaven and his light blue eyes were nearly colorless. Besides him were a valet and a bodyguard. They were all the kind of people that didn't attract much attention. The former's greatest characteristic was his thin hair, when the latter had short hair if you didn't count the thick beard that reached down from his ears. Good afternoon, Lord Singers. It's my honor to have you here as my guest. Klein held his hand to his chest and bowed. Usually a host was mostly leaned their bodies forward and reach out the right hand for a handshake when greeting a guest. But at this moment, he was in front of a noble, thus requiring him to be more courteous. Baron Singers nodded gently as he smiled in response. Is Vishojo actually shutting down? No way. I saw Iron Mouse and like everybody else was leaving. Are they actually shutting down? Really? It's crazy, man. They didn't donate like $500,000 to one of the Iron Mouse's foundation. That is crazy. And then they still owe them money. It is wild. Let's go. That's crazy, dude. It is so freaking wild. It's crazy. I don't think we've seen a company have that much of a big fallout in like 48 hours. Buy a cup of coffee on me, bro. OG, thank you, dude. You know what, man? I am buying coffee tonight, dude. I will buy coffee and I will send it in the Discord. I got you guys. After exchanging some, I'm gonna go buy some. I'm gonna go find some coffee. I got you guys. After exchanging some pleasantries, the two took their seats while the valet and bodyguard settled by the side. You know what? I think I'm going to go make my own coffee right now. Klein was just about to say something when the Baron Singers said with a gentle tone, Dantes, I'm already impressed. I'm actually going to make coffee after this chapter. I'm actually not going to lie. I'm really impressed with people like you. Not everyone can obtain riches from the chaos in Southern Continent. This requires plenty of guts and the courage to face adversity as well as stunning judgment. Back when I was facing bankruptcy, I had entered the idea of starting a new one in the Southern Continent, but unfortunately, I'm not a brave man. Base. Watch. We'll see right now. Although Baron Singers later became a noble, he wasn't a commoner in the true sense of the words. His great-grandfather and grandfather had benefited from the development of the colonies, earning them plenty of money from the sea trade. They were rather successful merchants. As for his father, he had invested in industries, building up his reputation and acquiring several factories. When it came to his generation, he blitzed into the developing banking industry with his sizable wealth, becoming one of the earliest millionaires in Lowen. During this process, Baron Singers had suffered 3 failures, but he overcame them one after another. The most harrowing incident was when the Salval People's Banks had suffered from a reputation crisis. A bank run happened, nearly bankrupting him. He keeps chatting about my experiences in the Southern Continent. Is he hinting to me that he has already discovered the problems with my background and is using it as a warning? He probably never expected the Southern Continent experience. He keeps repeating it is all fake. Klein scoffed internally, but he replied while looking absolutely normal, this is encouraged by rashness. Most people who head to the Southern Continent do have the spirit of adventure, but that's all they have. Without waiting for Baron Singers to continue, he smiled and said, I nearly hired Mr. Rebeck some time ago as my butler. He said that you were an excellent employer. Baron Singers listened in silence before sighing. That is something that fills me with regret. Back then, I was very sincere in hoping that Rebeck could continue being my butler, but he couldn't overcome the conflict with our positions. Upon saying that, Singers looked at the handsome and elegant Dwayne Tauntus, picked up the black tea that had been served by a servant, and took a sip. I also sincerely hope that we can be friends. I hope that you can transfer the coin company 3% to me. I will give you an offer you can't resist. Here it comes, but I have a contract with Ma'am Mary. Klein fell silent for 2 seconds and said with a smile, I deeply value my trustworthiness. Upon hearing such an answer, Singers didn't show an obvious anger. He smiled curiously and surprised. Aren't you going to listen to my offer? Klein deliberately spread out his hands with a wry smile. Is he doing the cinema pose? Plenty of guts, Berserk reference. I love Berserk, man. That's like one of my favorite series of all time, man. Literally, that's a 9x9 manga right there. Not the anime. even it has its good parts, but also has its bad parts. All adaptations, they are both good and bad. For me, I feel like the good outweighs it. He smiled curiously and surprised. Aren't you going to listen to my offer? Klein deliberately spread out his hands with a wide smile. I am afraid I will find it irresistible. Ha! Singers immediately laughed as he slowly stood up. You're as humorous as they say. At the same time, you have a firm will that the rumors failed to mention. He looked at his bodyguard and developed before saying to Dwayne Dantes with a smile, being a partner with you is definitely better than being a competitor. All right, it's time that I leave. There are many things that require my attention. Is this sincere praise or a veiled threat? Klein wasn't a spectator, so he wasn't able to interpret the subtleties. All he could do was shamelessly reply, likewise, I look forward to having the opportunity to cooperate with you in other domains. Lord Singers, dressed in a formal suit and a tie, Baron Singer smiled and nodded. Without saying another word, he was led out of the main door by Dwayne Dantes as his butler and valet. As he watched luxurious carriages disappear into the distance, Butler Walters suddenly said, Sir, should I hire some temporary bodyguards? Ah, Klein nearly failed to understand his butler, seeing his employer's expression remain unperturbed. Walter added, at times competition in business can endanger one's personal safety. Mr. Butler also noticed that veiled threats by Baron Singers. Klein curled the corners of his lips and said, I'm not too worried because this is Backland, because my name is known at the Church of Evernight, because I'm about to cooperate with the military. Therefore, I'm not afraid of suffering any form of retaliation beyond our domain. I'm not afraid of matters will develop like with the Intis ambassador. Besides, Baron Singers is a successful man with status and power. He won't be that rash, Klein thought inwardly. When Walter attempted to continue, Klein chuckled and said, however, being careful is forever a good habit, huh? You can hire 2 bodyguards, let them secretly provide me with protection. Trying to not have them be discovered by the servants at home. Yes, sir, Walter immediately replied. Klein thought for a moment and said, make a trip to a member of parliament Mach Place, invite him to dinner and Intis Srenzo restaurant tomorrow along with his wife and daughter. If they have a prior commitment, we can postpone it to another day. He planned on informing Mach that he had planned on taking the military test and completing the small arms deal. The most convenient method was that to visit Mosh and his residence and mention it in passing, but considering how there might be a demigod of the Mirard pathway around Hazel, any close contact might result in the aura of the gray fog on him being detected, and then they find out, yeah, what's up, man? Therefore, Klein changed his plans and decided to have the venue to be at a restaurant. This way, based on a judgment, demigod which had failed to paralyze Hazel was unlikely to accompany her. Shio hid in the shadows of the woods as she watched a brown carriage slowly drive past and turn into a particular street in Emperor's Borough. There was an obvious cost of arms with the carriage. It was mainly a flyer of 2 rings. They belonged to the captain of the Lone Kingdom's royal guards, Viscount Stratford. Realizing that she had made 0 discoveries, she gloomily left her hiding spot and took a nearby public carriage. She returned straight to the Backland Bridge area and walked into Eastborough. Upon coming to the Dararvi Street bar, Shio easily walked to the bar counter. As the drunkards avoided her, she directly asked the bartender, who was wiping a cup, any new jobs. The bartender immediately smiled. Yes, Butler Walter, who previously offered a 200-pound bounty for a few cheats, had offered a new job. It's very simple, secretly protecting his employer for a few days. The payment will be discussed face to face. It will definitely be a handsome reward. He was very pleased with your efficiency during the last mission. He requested that we give you priority. How about it? Are you interested? Shio had a rather deep impression of the butler as his employer because they had spent 200 pounds to seek out cheats who had only scamped 1,000 pounds of cloth. 1,000 pounds of cloth. Very generous, and he's quick to pay. Shio did a slight recall before nodding and saying, all right, bodyguard job, let's go. Let's go, dude. Oh, shit. Let's get it done, dude. Chapter 856. Bodyguards arrive. They're here. Oh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good ass freaking interaction, dude. Okay, there's only one downside to having Shio as your bodyguard. She is not gonna look that intimidating because of her height. They're gonna be like, really? She's your bodyguard? Oh wait, this is Klein's finally gonna be able to interact with her. Maybe then he'll be like, hey, maybe you should pray to the fool. Okay, and then maybe she joins the Terror Club? Okay, wait, this might finally happen. She might finally join. Chapter 856 is called The Bodyguards Arrive. In an apartment in Sherwood Borough, just as Shio entered, she caught the scent of the fried food. She couldn't help but twitch her nose and look up towards the kitchen floors. Would there be anyone else? Ford peeked her head out from her kitchen and asked with a smile. She'll put down the papers in her hand, half surprised and half grumbling. Do you still remember how long it's been since you stepped into a kitchen? Making a toast in the morning doesn't count. Ford's returned to the kitchen, leaving only her voice behind. I chose the food outside because they're better, and now the surrounding streets don't have any good fried chicken. The best fried chicken, bro, was Lawson's, man. Oh my god, so tender on the outside, but so juicy on the inside. I think about Lawson's chicken every day, man. Damn. I'm getting a craving right now just as she's having one. I suddenly had cravings for it. When it comes to Enta's cuisine, I like it the most. She walked to the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe as he watched Forrest busily preparing dinner. She deliberately and said, I received a job 100 pounds a day, ranging from 3 to 5 days, but I need another helper. Weren't you previously lacking in money? Why don't we do it together? Actually, my financial situation has improved. However, a mission that pays 50 pounds a day isn't bad. I'll save up as much as I can. There will be plenty of places that require me to spend money in the future. As Ford watched her oil-filled pot, she asked, what kind of job is it? She had already calculated how much she could receive. She combed her slightly coarse blonde hair and said, secretly protecting a tycoon named Dwayne Dantas. What did he encounter? Will it be very dangerous? Ford asked cautiously. She recalled and said, apparently there were some kind of business conflicts and his competitor had threatened him. This isn't anything dangerous. As you are aware, the powerful Beyonders and Backline wouldn't dare to take any risks, and it's easy to expose themselves, causing them to be targeted by the Nighthawks and mandated punishers. Perhaps the other party is a lunatic. You can't rule that out. While retorting, Forrest naturally thought of the world German Sparrow. This gentleman was a lunatic who dared to put off major upsets in Backland. She paused and scooped up the pieces of the fried chicken. Damn, that sounds good. Since you've already accepted the mission and I have nothing coming up recently, let's do it together. It's good too. We will be protecting him in secret so no one will discover that I'm a bodyguard. Otherwise, I'll have no way participating in those literature salons. Actually, I can tell then I'm experiencing life and gathering materials. My next novel will be about a female bodyguard and her male employer. She was already used to Forrest's penchant for letting her thoughts wander. She scrutinized up her nose and said, let's head over after dinner. 160 Buckland Street. Klein had sped up his ritual in the master bedroom's bathroom and headed above the gray fog. He planned on handling some random matters before the bodyguards hired by Butler Walter came. It wouldn't be convenient for him to do it in the coming days, and among those random matters, the most important task was to confirm the situation with creeping hunger. What situation with creeping hunger? Sitting behind the seat belonging to the fool, Klein made the human skin glove. Oh, you're right. Oh, he has to keep creeping hunger in check now. Sitting behind the seat belonging to the fool, Klein made the human skin glove fly out from the junk pile. Oh, almost dropped my mic. After a series of divinations, he discovered that creeping hunger was rather stubborn this time. None of the negative side effects had changed. So everything's still the same, but he's just more stubborn. It's a result of Mr. A's corruption, so it's absolutely not giving up its praise of the true creator. The corners of Klein's mouth twitch as he seriously considered the solution to this matter. I'm going to raise the volume first, see if that's a good solution. Finding another way to threaten it. No, how can I call it threatening? Under the premise of being a proactive, I will be engaging in friendly communication with it. Klein wrapped the corners of the long model table and muttered silently, I'll be writing to Mr. Zick later today. I can also mention in passing that the creeping hunger seal is no longer effective. I can also bring some mushrooms along with me. No, that wouldn't work. Although it will stop creeping hunger from praising the true creator, it will make it unusable. Huh? I'll get a few of the regional mutated mushrooms from Frank to see if there are any other effects. What? Klein is going to abuse the glove again? Now I low-key feel bad for the glove. Okay. After leaving the bathroom, Klein... Wait. After determining his thought process, Klein threw Zick's copper whistle and the adventure harmonica through the door sacrifice and bestowment before returning to the real world. He packed up the ritual items and wiped away the traces of the ritual. After leaving the bathroom, Klein walked to his study desk, taking out a fountain pen and paper as he deliberated over the things to say. Dear Mr. Zick, it's been a while since I've written to you. I wonder how you've been recently. Due to certain unforeseen circumstances, your seal on the creeping hunger is no longer effective. Can you give me the corresponding method? I wish to apply the seal on it again. Have you heard of the creatures known as Spirit World Plunders? What level are they and what kinds of characteristics do they have? What are they using? Where are they usually active in? I might be heading to the southern continent in the near future. If I obtain any new information on Def, I'll write to you as soon as possible. Putting down the fountain pen and reading it twice, Klein folded the letter and blew the copper whistle. Suddenly, white bones spewed out from the floor, gushing out like a fountain pen in midair, forming a giant skeleton that was nearly 4 meters tall. Wait, is he still in the bathroom? Oh, wait, he left the bathroom. Okay, he left the bathroom. The skeleton lowered its head to glance at Dwayne Dantes before bending its back, bending its right arm and spreading open its palm. This messenger is becoming more polite. Look at that. He's growing on him now. Remember how mean he was in the beginning? Look at that. Now the messenger's growing on him. Am I getting a phone call? The skeleton lowered. Wait, the messenger's becoming more polite. Klein on in satisfaction, handing the letter. The skeleton messenger didn't stay, and it immediately disintegrated, pouring down like a waterfall before rapidly vanishing. Klein silently heaved a sigh of relief as he retracted his gaze and continued writing a letter to Frank. The dried mushrooms you provide were pretty good. Do you still have more time? Do you find the idea previously mentioned viable? If you encounter any difficulties during the research process, you can write to me. After folding the letter, Klein blew into the adventurous harmonica. He saw Miss Messenger Renette Tinker appear by his side. She still lacked a head as she wore a complicated black dress while holding 4 beautiful blonde red eyes. Easy, did you see the Crunchyroll English? Yeah, dude, the episodes drop tomorrow. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to see the dub. Can you lock onto Frank Lee? Klein asked rather confidently. After all, Miss Messenger was... I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to sit down and watch the dub. I get to show Lil Easy the dub, and I get to show the Misses the dub. So I'm excited for that. Can you lock onto Frank Lee? Klein asked rather confidently. After all, Miss Messenger was unlike ordinary messenger. She was a spirit world creature at the demigod level. Under normal circumstances, a messenger could only locate the contractor or the person who held the summoning ritual. As for the latter, there was a limitation. Once the ritual was too far away, the messenger wouldn't be able to find him. Renette's four heads turned in unison and looked at Klein. Yes, it's that, ma'am, who wants to plant everything, right? Did the time get specified? I'm not sure. Hopefully it drops like early in the morning, you know? I'd like it if the episode drops like 12 hours before the dub. What did Frank do to leave such a deep impression on Miss Messenger? Back when I replied, she even said that she hoped that she wasn't dead. Klein nodded seriously. Yes, Renette Tinker's 4 heads spoke one after another. Can locate, I labeled him. Ah, Klein turned agape, nearly forgetting his motives. Poor Frank. No, the great and powerful Frank. He actually got Miss Messenger to specially label him. May the goddess watch over him. Klein silently exhaled and handed the letter to Renette. Please hand it to Frank. He will pay you the gold coin. One of the heads in Renette's hands opened in its mouth and bit down on the letter. Then it directly entered the spirit world, unable to be sensed again. After dealing with those matters, Klein left the copper whistle and the harmonica on him. He went downstairs to have dinner. Midway, Walter entered and whispered into Dwayne Dante's ears. The bodyguards have arrived. It's Miss Shio and her friends from before. I will arrange for them to secretly provide your protection, Miss Shio and her friends. Don't tell me it's Miss Magicians. Klein was momentarily at a loss for words. All she could do was gently nod. Acknowledging the new tidbit of information, his spirituality actually didn't sense that someone had infiltrated his house. However, this was a very normal since it was in time for most people to sleep for the night. When it was a period of time, any abnormalities became rather obvious. Therefore, unless Klein specifically used his spirituality to leave undetectable marks at key spots, or if the intruder had plenty of ill intentions towards him, he would find it difficult to notice him. My laptop lagging a bit? Maybe, I don't know if it's my end. I think my end is good so far. You would think. In a bedroom on the 3rd floor, Shio and Forrest each took a window. Through the glass, they looked down at the garden. This is my dream house. When I have enough money, I'll buy a house just like this in a scenic area. No, I'll still have to choose backland. There are more delicacies here. It's more convenient, Forrest said sincerely. With that said, she sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, I have the curse of the full moon. I can only continue improving myself. Otherwise, I'd have kept a house instead of selling it for cash. She traced her friend's gaze and looked outside, whispering, I lived in such a residence when I was little. Well, she came from nobility, right? I remember that. Shio came from nobility. I mean, I think her family lost the title, right? I lived in such a residence when I was little. Forrest stole a glance at Shio, and as she had no idea what to say, she changed the topics. How should we provide him with protection? Shio retracted her gaze. When Mr. Dwayne Dantes is home without guests, we'll just hide in the room and watch the surroundings to prevent anyone from infiltrating. When there are guests, we'll head to the adjacent room and keep close attention to any developments. We'll open the door at any moment to save him. If Mr. Dwayne Dantes were to head out, the butler will inform us ahead of time. I'll hide underneath the carriage and protect him while you'd follow on another carriage. Shio, you're becoming more and more professional. Forrest seriously praised her before chuckling. I saw Mr. One of them is so dead at the end of this volume. They've had such a beautiful, loving chemistry. Like, they are like 2 inseparable best friends. One has to die. One has to die. Only 101 tabs. Damn, that is a lot of tabs. One has to die at the end of this volume. Like, not maybe. Like, one has to die. Because you guys said that fucking... When I was crying like a little bitch in volume 1, you were like, this isn't even top 7. This is gonna be one of them, man. This is gonna be one of them. Sorry, I don't mean to, I'm not making fun of you guys when I go like, oh, this is not even top 7. Shio and Fours, one of them losing one is definitely gonna be even more sad than that. Before Force finished her sentence, she suddenly saw a carriage stop outside the company. Following that, a few policemen in black and white checkered uniforms got out of the carriage. What's happening? She looked at her friends and found that Shio looked equally puzzled. Inside the living room on the second floor, Klein met the four officers. Mr. Dwayne Dantas, do you know Mr. Karin? Klein tried recalling and remembered, as I mispronounced it, recalling and remembered that it was the gentleman who had sold him the coin company shares. Oh, that guy? Yes, what happened to him? Klein asked calmly. The officer that led the team replied in a rather polite manner. What the fuck? He committed unaliving? In addition, he had left behind a will accusing you of forcing him to sell his shares and torturing him using all kinds of underhanded means, causing him to suffer from severe depression, and his family has provided proof regarding of the contents of his will? What? Did they just scam him? What? They scammed him so hard. What? What a piece of shit. Holy shit. That is the life of a tycoon. Damn. All right, next chapter. Chapter 857 is called Poignant. Korean committed unaliving. His will accuse me of forcing him to sell his shares. His family can even provide evidence. What about, I thought they put in the contract that he would have to buy it. His family can even provide evidence, and Scully listened to the officer's description. He digested the relevant information and produced questions in his mind. After he understood the situation, his first reaction was, Baron Sinjos has taken action? Ah. This powerful banker didn't hesitate to carry out his follow-up action against me after failing to cooperate with me, treating me as an enemy. He didn't hold back. Furthermore, he has clearly gathered enough information to know that Dwayne Dantas is involved with the Church of the Evernight and member of Parliament Mosh and the faction backing him. If he were to directly deal with me, it would be easily attract unwanted trouble. Therefore, he chose to strike at the other end of the transaction. Karen, this will be more indirect and safer, but it will be equally treacherous and ruthless. This is an utter disregard of an ordinary person's life. Klein suddenly recalled the innocent people who collapsed during the Great Smog battle, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of rage surging within him as it bubbled to the surface but was ice cold. Klein used his clown powers to control his facial expressions, making him look even more surprised as he asked, seemingly finding the situation incomprehensible. Are you certain you aren't joking? The leading officer nodded solemnly. If we didn't have sufficient clues to support it, we wouldn't disturb a gentleman like you. Mr. Dwayne Dantas, I'll have to trouble you to follow us to the station for further investigations. Despite looking unperturbed, Klein's mind was racing. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed something illogical. Regardless, murder is a serious crime in the current Lone Kingdom. With Baron Singer's identity, status, and social connections, he will have at least a few dozen effective means to deal with a foreign tycoon that just came to Backland 2 months ago. There's no need to go this far. After all, as a member of high society, he will more or less understand or be in contact with beyond powers. He knows that there are all kinds of indescribable means to pursue the true murderer. Unless he's completely confident, taking the risk of framing someone for murder is definitely the worst choice. If Sinters were to use his authority to surpass the investigations of the official Beyonders, it will definitely be more effective and simpler to employ other means. Even if he temporarily isn't aware of that, I'm about to work with military. He's definitely aware of my connection with the Church of the Evernight and member of Parliament, Moched. He wouldn't do things in such a simple or brazen manner. More importantly, even if he thinks of a murderer who would kill for 3% shares, why didn't he do it earlier? He could have held Korean at gunpoint early on, resolving the matters without causing any fuss. Klein glanced at the officer in front of him while in thought without immediately giving an answer. And in the adjacent room, Shiu and Forrest were leaning against the wall, using the latter's abilities to open a small door. They didn't... Forrest can open up a small door? Open up a smaller door. He didn't miss any parts of the entire conversation. What do we do? If the police wants to arrest him, do we still provide protection? Forrest, who lacked the experience of a bounty hunter, hurriedly suppressed her voice as she asked her friend. She never expected the business conflict would result in a chase of a murder and suspicion of framing. The enemy she had imagined had transformed from an infiltrating murderer's bandit into a police officer. She was momentarily unsure of what to do. She was also in a dilemma. Usually, a bodyguard would only deal with illegal encroachers, but they had given a sufficiently sizable remuneration. Forrest was surprised and amused by the responses she asked. If he really is in prison, are you thinking of breaking him out of jail? Let's put aside the problem and danger. That way you two would be wanted, and you wouldn't be able to be a bounty hunter again. When the time comes, do you plan on fleeing elsewhere with this gentleman? As she spoke, Forrest, who had already come up with a story, discovered that Dwayne Dantas had a response. This elegant gentleman with white sideburns turned to look at Walter and said with a calm and gentle voice, Two matters. First, visit Baron Sinders and tell him that someone is trying to frame me. Walter revealed a rare look of surprise and confused to find his employer's instructions incomprehensible. From his point of view, this matter was highly likely to be machinated by Baron Sinders. It was pointless visiting him, as it would only result in mockery. Klein smiled. He was a guest recently. He had threatened me for the shares. Following that, Mr. Karan met with his demise. I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be under suspicion. Therefore, I believe that it's necessary to warn him. This is what a gentleman should do. The officers were slightly perturbed by what was said. They had the inexplicable feeling that the matter was more complicated than they had imagined. As for Walter, he was somewhat enlightened as he replied, "Yes, sir. I'll immediately visit Baron Sinders and inform your friends and his of this former matter. This way, if this wasn't done by the Baron Sinders, all subsequent troubles would be dealt with by him. If he were the mastermind behind this, by involving him in the name of a kindly warning him and spreading the news, it could create sufficient pressure from the public opinion. It would make it easier for the member of parliament and Mach and company to rescue him, and then he'd be safe." Smart. A good butler really helps. Klein silently praised him as he continued. Second, please call for my lawyer to handle this tiny inconvenience. Jurgen? Is Jurgen still technically his lawyer? No, he hasn't. Has he met him? He has met Jurgen. After instructing his butler and valet, Klein looked at the few officers in front of him. "All right, I'll follow you back to the station. I won't make things difficult for you. However, I wouldn't answer any of your questions before my lawyer arrives." The leading officer heaved a sigh of relief and said with a nod, "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Dantes." At this moment, in adjacent room, Forge hurriedly said, "Are we following?" "Yes. I'll hide underneath the carriage for now and follow it into the station. We can't be certain those police officers are real ones." Shio replied rather cautiously. She paused, seizing a moment to ask, "What else do you wish to say?" Force thought for a moment and poignantly said, "Nobles and tycoons are truly terrifying." Shio was taken aback. She didn't speak further as she walked to the window. Supporting herself with one hand, she nimbly jumped down, landing in the shadows of the building. A few minutes later, Klein and two officers boarded a carriage belonging to Dwayne Dantes. When he sat down, he looked at the thick carpet, his expression the same as before. As a police station, Klein was directly brought into an interrogation room. However, he didn't give response, regardless of what the officer asked. Only when his lawyer arrived did he give an account. He said that he had only met Karan once, and he also mentioned that the negotiation of the share purchase was completely handled by a professional team. Hence, he didn't personally involve himself in it. He repeated his statement, saying that he was unaware of anything else. This left the interrogator at a loss until he was called out of the room. Damn, he's sticking to his story. If only you had someone on the lawyer pathway. Who? Jurgen is a lawyer, but he's not. But he wasn't on the lawyer pathway. It was the other dude that he ran into during the whole bike company share scenario back in like volume 2, right? Was it volume 2? After a while, the officer responsible for recording the statements walked in and said, "All right, you may leave. A gentleman with an honorable status has vouched for you and has paid for your bail." Klein didn't immediately stand up. As he continued sitting in the chair, he looked up and said, "Who was it?" The officer said with a respectful tone, "Baron Sinders." Klein immediately revealed a smile as he slowly got up. He left the interrogation room with his lawyer before meeting up with his butler and valet. At the entrance to the police station, he met Baron Sinders once again. This powerful banker's hair was still neatly combed back, with silver and black interweaving with each other. Beside him was a valet and his bearded bodyguard. "Thank you for your warning. Thank you for your warning, Dantes. Wait, thank you for your warning, Dantes? Dwayne Dantes. Thank you for your warning, Dantes." How did I forget to say that all of a sudden? For few people would be so calm and sharp when they encounter such a sudden turn of events. Sinders smiled as he took 2 steps forward, reached out his palm, and shook Klein's hand. Klein replied with a smile, "I was simply trusting your character." Sinders obviously didn't believe such a lip service. He found an excuse and with his bodyguard boarded Dwayne Dantes' carriage. As for his valet, he sent him off to his luxurious carriage to instruct the carriage driver to follow behind. As a parcel of trees flew past outside the carriage window, Sinders spoke first. "Dantes, how did you come to such a judgment?" Klein glanced at his butler and valet beside him and chuckled. 2 points. First, I believe that you will have a better solution. You wouldn't do something this violent. Sinders drank a mouthful of his white wine at the carriage as he chuckled. Indeed, the corners of Klein's mouth twitched as he said, "I'm very curious as to what kind of methods you would employ." He had only asked in passing about the extravagant hopes of obtaining an answer. However, Sinders chuckled and said, "With matters developing this far, it doesn't matter if I tell you. It's very simple. Isn't your goal to enter high society? I plan to hire a woman of different ages. They will accuse you on different social occasions that you toyed with their feelings and bodies, but you refuse to be responsible for your actions. If necessary, I'll find a new toddling children to clasp you around the legs, calling you Pa. Perhaps I might get some civilians to accuse you of seducing their wives and destroying their marriage. This is low in a rather conservative place. No one will wish to have such a person as a friend. Likewise, the churchy overnight who values marriage and family will also distance himself from you. Damn! It would be difficult to clear the air on such matters, yet it wouldn't be a big deal. They wouldn't use the resources to help do investigation for you. By the time you eventually find a loophole, your image would be hardened and known by all. How many people do you think will believe your explanations? You are just a newcomer and have yet to build a reputation. You aren't that trustworthy. What the fuck is this tycoon life, dude? Of course, if you're willing to accept my conditions, I'd stake my reputation for you. That would be the first step. Now it wouldn't happen. Klein was, damn, this is fucked up. This is brutal, dude. Klein was almost stunned by what he heard. He found himself too inexperienced compared to a seasoned banker who had established a commercial empire for himself. I believe I should thank you, he replied with an unfazed smile. Second, if you really wanted the 3% shares, I wouldn't be your match when it comes to wealth. It would ultimately be better to force Mr. Karian rather than killing him after the sale is completed. Sinjas raised his right hand and pressed his fingers to the corner of his forehead as he chuckled. No, you're mistaken. I was bent on obtaining the 3% shares. However, you're right about one thing. I did prepare an irresistible offer for Korean, but he suddenly made the decision and completed the deal with you at extremely fast speed. It caught me by surprise. Klein narrowed his eyes slightly as he suddenly fell silent. Returning to 160 Boakland Street, Shio circled the area and entered the third floor again, seeing Forrest, who had easily entered by using door opening. How is it? Nothing happened, right? Forrest, who had only followed him from a distance away, asked curiously. Shio shook her head into a slightly wooden manner. No. She then revealed a poignant expression. Nobles and tycoons are truly terrifying. Oh, so the paw reference. This is a reference to Mark Twain's Running for Governor, a common piece of literature taught to Chinese middle school students. Oh. I went down a subscriber! Who unfollowed? What? You're breaking my heart. No! We just passed 3... Oh my god, thank you. We just passed 3,400. Holy shit, dude. Thank you guys. It's okay. We went up. We went up a lot. If one person unfollowed, they probably just unfollowed by accident because they're going to subscribe again right now. 3 with the power of divination. 3, 2, 1. Okay. They actually left. We actually lost the fellow. It's okay. They'll be back. They'll be back. Chapter 858 is called Generous. I kind of want to unsubscribe just for the fun to see your reaction. Now I know it's going to be you, Bullseye. On the tiny balcony of the master bedroom, Klein stood behind a railing in front of Dwayne Tauntus. He silently watched Baron Singer's luxurious carriage depart. His mind was still resonating with the conversation he had just had. He believed that there had been a secret plot behind the acquiring of the coin company shares from the very beginning. According to Sintress, although the coin company had great potential and bright prospects, its current value is only limited to backland. It's constrained by many conditions, making it not worthy for a powerful banker to place such great importance on it that he had to take on the stance of being hell-bent on acquiring it. After all, even if he didn't succeed, it would only be a difference in momentary profit. It would result in any loss. Let me continue. I was going to drink more water and I just finished it. I'll get more later. According to Sintress, although the coin company is really loud over here, has great potential and bright prospects, its currently value is only limited to backland. It's constrained by many conditions, making it not worthy for a powerful banker to place such great importance on it that he had to take a stance of being hell-bent on acquiring it. After all, even if he didn't succeed, it would only be a difference in monetary profit. It wouldn't result in any losses. For the seller, Caron is very normal to be under external stress to sell his shares for cash. It's also very normal for him to be unwilling to see money bags burn singers from the Conservative Party, but herein lies the problem. As a businessman faced with a deal that isn't considered important, the political inclinations are something to be considered. When the prices are similar, there's no reason to reject the possibility of receiving an extremely high premium. Yet he had deliberately rushed to close the deal with Dwayne Tauntus before Sintress could make his final offer. It's as if he had a grudge with money or views the Conservative Party with extreme prejudice. And this doesn't match the current political climate. The Lowing Kingdom's internal politics hasn't reached such a splintered state. From the looks of it, someone is forcing Sintress to do this. As someone who had designed a trap using the Caron's 3% shares as the bait and me as the cover to lure Sintress into the trap, wishing to achieve a certain goal, Klein looked at the street lamps under the night sky as he sighed poignantly. Based on my assumption, If I hadn't discovered the problem tonight and hadn't sent someone to Cinders, the subsequent developments would definitely have me crushed by all kinds of seemingly incriminating evidence, and when the military or the church ever intervenes, there will undoubtedly be a twist in the evidence incriminating Cinders. During this process, just a tiny misjudgment on Cinders' part will result in him treating Dwayne Dantes as an accomplice of the mastermind behind the ploy. He would use a rather... Wait, what's he going to use? He would use a rather intense method in response, harming the final nail in my coffin. As for the mastermind was and their true goals, Klein had no idea. If he doesn't know, I don't know. All he could do was confirm that Ma'am Mary likely wasn't aware of the truth. She was only used due to her anxious to preserve her control over the coin company. In short, she wasn't qualified to be deeply involved in the mastermind's ploy. Environmental protection, new party, conservative party, bankers, acquisition, framing, one word after another surfaced in Klein's mind, seemingly allowing him to see through the present common background. He saw the danger strings that were hidden behind the surface. They existed for a long time and hadn't been quelled because of the Great Smog. It's even possible that it was just an extension of the tragedy. When all of these meshed together, mixed with a tense international environment, Klein suddenly thought of the word revolution. Revolution. In that second, Klein seemed to catch a whiff of the impending storm, together with the prophecy of the apocalypse. I forgot about that. I wonder how much chaos and madness are brewing in secret. Currently, my main goal is to start for the military and investigate the truth behind the Great Smog of Backland. If I were to get caught up in this maelstrom, there's a high chance I'll get involved in unnecessary problems. Perhaps it might expose my sequence powers, preventing me from continuing my act as Dwayne Dantes. Klein retracted his gaze, having made up his decision. It was to quickly extradite himself from the matter. As for Cinder's safety, he wasn't too worried. First, the former had the Conservative Party backing him, and he had his own faction. With him on the alert, it would be difficult for him to suffer any further harm. Second, Klein didn't have any deep ties with him, thus providing a warning had already spoken volumes of his character. As for the truth behind Carrion's death, he had no right to carry out any investigations. All he could do was trust in the Nighthawk's rich experiences and admire the means to have a chance of finding the real clues. How should I extradite myself? As long as the shares are with me, it implies that I'll ultimately remain center stage. Get Ma'am Mary to acquire it ahead of time. That will be very difficult. She likely doesn't have the funds. Sell it to the Cinders, and that will be in violation of the contract. Amidst Klein's flurry of thoughts, he gradually had an idea. What is this idea? His facial muscles twitched as a little for something baffling reason before they relaxed. This is because what he wanted to do was something he had planned on doing but lacked the ability to do so. Furthermore, it would also benefit him from establishing an image, bettering his chances of entering high society. In a room adjacent to the balcony, Shio and Forrest were observing the streets and the garden. One of them was looking at the crimson moon and the half hidden behind the thick fog. There was a prolonged silence. Only when Dwayne Dantes' lights were extinguished did Forrest turn to look at her friend. She said in excitement and clear poignancy, being a tycoon sure isn't easy. If you were him, you might have gone bankrupt in 3 days and be sent to jail. Shio shot a glance and said, I can hire a powerful butler, a professional lawyer, and a capable business secretary to help me. Forrest didn't continue, putting her down as she said with a smile, if I were you, I would change all of it to cash, bonds, and property. I'll use the annual income to bring about to maintain a decent life. Just as she said that, she saw Shio frown slightly. She cast her gaze towards the first floor. What happened? Forrest tensed up. Shio observed for a few seconds before saying, my spiritual perception tells me that an item of matter related to black magic has appeared. One of the biggest advantages of a sheriff was that when they were close enough, they could sense matters related to evil, chaos, and madness that weren't screened. Black magic. Forrest was considered a senior beyonder, so she wasn't unfamiliar with that. Strictly speaking, anything that didn't pass through the 7 Orthodox deities was considered as black magic. It included ritualistic magic that prayed to secret existences. What is it? In the typical sense, black magic referred to the use of flesh and blood, hair, and all kinds of strange items that cast strange spells. It partly involved evil gods, one beyond their powers, the spirituality of the materials used, and the correct symbols of the magic labels. Shio nodded heavily and said, yes, it's one of the first floors. I plan on taking a look. Stay here to protect Mr. Dantes. Forrest kept silent for 2 seconds and nodded without wasting any time. Okay. After Shio left the balcony's half-open room, Forrest took out Layman's travels from a hidden pouch, prepared to immediately take action if anything amiss happened. Elsewhere, Shio nimbly and briskly arrived at the first floor. Following her senses, she arrived outside a room. After confirming that the target was inside, she was surprised as her expression gradually darkened. If she didn't remember wrongly, this room likely belongs to Butler Walter, who had hired her. During her momentarily dazed, the black magic item or matter was triggered, which triggered her spiritual perception vanished. Calm returned to the room as though nothing abnormal had happened. Why am I yawning? Oh, I need coffee. She hurriedly pressed her ears to the door and carefully listened, confirming that there was the breathing of a human inside. After waiting for a while and seeing that Walter wasn't doing anything, she returned to the third floor with a look of suspicion. She recounted her findings to her friend and finally said, "Do we feign ignorance or think of a way to remind Mr. Dantes? You need a caffeine detox program?" I think I do, man, but I will never do that. I love coffee way too much, man. Forrest thought and said, "Perhaps the butler doesn't have any ill intentions. Let's keep observing." That's the one thing I'll never give up now. Coffee. After studying understand, she tisked and wondered. I went so long not drinking coffee, saying, I don't need coffee. I hate coffee. Coffee tastes gross. Now I am like obsessed with coffee. I have to say that Mr. Dantes is really a pitiful person. Not only was he used by others to harm Baron Sindros and get framed, nearly throwing him into jail and losing his reputation, but he has also Butler, who researches black magic with an unknown motive. So I hope he doesn't lose his life because of this. On this front, he's only a helpless commoner. She'll nod in agreement. If we're unable to determine the butler's intentions after 3 days are over, we can leave a slip for him to warn him. The next morning, Klein glanced on Walter in a normal fashion after having breakfast before leaving home with Richardson. He rode on the carriage to St. Samuel Cathedral. After the preaching of the prayers, Klein didn't make any donations and said he directly came to Bishop Electra. Is there something? Although the bishop was under immense stress due to the infiltration of Chandler's-Gate, he was still rather friendly when dealing with the faithful. Klein smiled repeatedly. I've recently been involved in certain matters and have come to recognize my true self. Without waiting for a lecture to inquire, he continued, I wish to establish a foundation that targets the poor. I hope that they can receive help from the church. I will place the coin company shares I have on hand into this foundation. Damn! So as to kickstart the initiative using all the funds obtained from the contact. Electra was nearly stupefied by what he heard because it was definitely a sizable sum. Although it was public knowledge how much Dwayne Tontis spent on acquiring the 3% shares just from the relevant sources of information, it was estimated to be over 10,000 pounds. Furthermore, the future returns were nothing to scoff at. And back then, Madame Mary had been persuaded by many men of status who had wealth in range of tens of thousands of pounds. Therefore, for Dwayne Tontis to suddenly donate more than 10,000 pounds will definitely be considered a generous move. And the whole of the Church of Evernight, apart from the donations from a deceased will, there would only be a handful of one-time donations that exceed this amount. This is an act that deserves all kinds of praise. Electra said from the bottom of his heart. Look at that. However, I have the obligation to remind you that you shouldn't do something that exceeds your reach. Kind Spawner replied, this is a small sum for me as well, but it's still acceptable. It wouldn't affect my life and business. Electra's smile gradually turned warm as he said with a nod, the goddess will definitely watch you. Holy shit, she probably is watching him, dude. But not in a good way, in an evil way. There's no way she has a second title that's all sinister, and that there has to be some implications behind that. The goddess would definitely watch you. Upon hearing this blessing, Klein's expression nearly froze. Electra continued, I'll report this matter to His Grace and try to organize a charity party for this foundation. When the time comes, I'll invite the goddesses faithful from different domains. They will include powerful aristocrats and their families. Let's see if there are any more people who are willing to participate. He knew very well that Dwayne Tontis was attempting to enter high society, therefore he had deliberately made mention of powerful aristocrats. Now you take that back. She is watching. She's definitely watching. And before we read New Mushrooms, I am gonna go get coffee. I got my coffee. I'm locked in. We're gonna wait a chapter as it cools down. But blowing air ASMR, maybe we'll do that another day. We'll see. Chapter 859 is called New Mushrooms. Oh, okay. We got some new stuff. We got new mushrooms. And the bottom cabin of the feature where it was pitch black. Frankly, now that he's a Sequence 5 druid, okay, new mushrooms, I get it. Frank Lee lit a candle which illuminated the table covered with flesh, mushrooms, wheat, and fish. He casually pushed the items away and cleared out a space that was just enough to accommodate a piece of fish. Right on the heels of that, he spread out a piece of paper, picked up a fountain pen, and wrote an excited expression. My dear friend, Grimsper, I'm delighted to know that you found the dry mushrooms to be pretty good. Perhaps it's more useful than I imagined it to be. When I'm free, I'll take another look at them. As I've been fully focused in body and mind in the experiment you mentioned, I've already stopped all other creations. Most of the mushrooms have been burned away by Nina, leaving them with the last 3. I hope it will be a help to you. Placed together with them are my last products. One of them is a type of mushroom that grows by feeding on flesh and blood. And they have 3 breeds. The first is crossbred with wheat that can be grounded into a mushroom powder and can be used to make bread. Another has the characteristics of being mixed with milk, allowing milk to be drawn from them. The last has been crossbred with fish. They can come with a refreshing taste and it has a thick, meaty texture. The thing to take note of is that they are absolutely not to be eaten raw. They need to be cooked in 90 degrees Celsius hot water. What is that in Fahrenheit? I'm sorry. Can you tell I'm American? I don't know my Celsius. What, like, is it like 160 degrees? No, wait. Yes, I've had a PC. My PC has overheated past 100. This is like 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes? They need to be cooked in 180 degree Fahrenheit, I believe. I don't know. Hot water for at least 5 minutes so as to kill any living characteristics. Otherwise, regardless of what it turns into, it would absorb flesh and blood around it, including human organs. Another point, it's unable to distinguish between normal flesh and monster flesh. Nor can they deal with the latest properly. They will accumulate with the corresponding toxicity and madness. How much was it? I didn't 90 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I still think they will experience different mutations because of the different types of monsters, flesh, producing different kinds of danger. However, I wasn't able to verify that because I lack a sufficient number of monster corpses. If you were to obtain one while adventuring, please mail me one. I only need a tiny amount. As for other problems, they might exist. I'm not sure either. It's still a prototype, preventing further attempts and observations. A bit under boiling? Okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense. I wish you all the best and to have a bountiful time adventuring. Sincerely, your friend, Frank Lee. After putting down the fountain pen, Frank Lee read his reply in its entirety before folding its satisfaction. He found a gold coin and placed it over the letter. He quickly set up the messenger summoning ritual in preparation to chant the incantation. At this moment, he subconsciously surveyed his surroundings and was stunned. Then Frank moved the nearby Polisol out the door. An Empress borough, the opulent villa of Earl Hall. Audrey was hiding in her room, observing the glass bottle in her hand. It's 194 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you. I did not know that. It was a bottle of translucent, colorless, sticky liquid. It was like a mirror when still, completely reflecting everything within its vicinity. When undiluting happened, a very tiny whirlpool would silently spin beneath the surface. This was none other than the hypnotist potion formula which she made the potion? This was none other than the hypnotist potion formula which she had successfully concocted. Audrey had already digested her psychiatrist's potion formula and planned on advancing to sequence 6 before Backland psychological alchemists contacted her. After using placate. After using placate to quell her mental state, Audrey gently bit down on her lip, raised her glass bottle and downed the potion. After a brief chill, she suddenly felt her mind seem to explode. Her body also seemed to be contaminated as it grew somewhat incorporeal. At that moment, her soul body, astral projection, and earth body were being absorbed and assimilated by her body of her heart and mind. Her entire person was like an amalgamation of pure thought that began churning. She felt boundless. She felt of collective subconscious which connected all living creatures, and she sensed her spirituality sky, the scud of the. She sensed the spirituality sky that stood in the contrast. Having experienced the sense of alarm she received during her psychiatrist's advancements, Audrey didn't panic. She ultimately maintained a silver lucidity and curbed her instinctive urge to fuse into the sea. She allowed her consciousness to spread out in all directions before contracting like a rubber ball. After an unknown period of time, she finally found her inner self. She saw the back of her hand conversed in dance. Firm golden scales saw that her hair on her shoulders turned luxuriant and heavy, as though they were really made of gold. After those abnormalities recessed, Audrey quickly recovered. However, when she looked in the mirror, she found that her green eyes appeared clean, but deep down was a strange bottomless whirlpool. It made it difficult for others to shift their gaze away from them, easily drowning within them. This is a sign of dispersing spirituality that has yet to have been fully reconverged. Audrey slowly eased her brows as her smile turned bright. She looked at herself in the mirror and nodded gently, finding it hard to hide her smile. Audrey, you are already sequence 6. After she calmed her emotions, she seriously introspected herself to determine her new beyond her powers and the qualitative changes. After some work, Audrey came to a rough understanding of the situation. First, her constitution has received a significant enhancement, be it her strength or agility. It has exceeded, be it her strength or agility, it had exceeded an ordinary person's. She could also form a layer of scales. What? Dragon scales? She can form a layer of scales over her skin. That is one step closer to becoming her dragon form. She could also form a layer of scales over her skin, largely resisting and reducing any damage. Second was a qualitative change in her psychological cue. It became a form of hypnosis within the non-combat domain. As long as she made the target focus on something, Audrey could open a door to her body of heart and mind and directly alter their conscience and affect their subconscious. This way, the target wouldn't notice that they were abiding by her arrangements, taking her actions that didn't match their true intentions. Of course, if Audrey's arrangement directly harmed the target's life or something he subconsciously placed great importance on, then the target would produce some intense resistance, causing the hypnosis to fail. In addition, if the target had a strong soul and firm body and mind, they would be able to resist hypnosis to a certain extent. Third, battle hypnotism. Audrey could forcibly hypnotize an enemy, making them do something abnormal, such as attacking her companions or avoid her, the hypnotist. However, such hypnotism only lasted for short periods of time. The target would quickly snap awake and sense the problem. Similarly, it was unable to harm the target's life and make the enemies commit unaliving. Fourth was such a psychological invisibility, with one's control of the target's body of heart and mind, allowing oneself to remain in the blind spot of one's consciousness. She could achieve the effect of invisibility despite someone standing in front of her without being able to sense her. Okay, very impressive. So she can like hide in plain sight. Very impressive. My only regret is that I still lack beyond her powers that can launch direct attacks. Audrey puffed her cheeks in an indescribable manner as she tried hard to converge her spirituality, make her eyes less intoxicating. After mostly eliminating her abnormalities, she opened the door to let Susie in. With the help of the golden retriever, she began familiarizing herself with her new beyond her powers. Before long, her lady's maid Annie knocked on the door and entered with an invitation letter in hand. My lady, the church will be organizing a charity party on Saturday night for a newly established Bursay Foundation that's targeted at the poor. They have invited you. I'm sorry. Are we gonna run into her in person again? Before long, her lady maid Annie knocked on the door and entered with invitation letter in hand. Yeah, they have invited you. Audrey didn't directly agree as she asked, oh my god, did they invite my parents? Yes, they also invited as well as Lord Hybrid. Annie replied honestly. Audrey nodded and said with a smile, tell the church that I'll be participating. Also, figure out the exact situation with the charity foundation so that I can better decide on the amount to donate. In the evening at Intis Strenzu restaurant, this place is truly dazzling. It's much prettier than the living rooms in the activity room of the many nobles. Force looked around as though she had gathered material. Although she had participated in many noble organization literature salons, she had always visited them at their residences and not such top-end restaurants. Shio grabbed at her coarse blonde hair. This is the style of Intis. It's different from us. It might look pretty, but it lacks substance. How does it lack substance? Look, those are all famous oil paintings and sculptures. Forrest deliberately retorted. During this process, she suppressed her voice as they hadn't entered by the main door. As she spoke, she found the private room mentioned by Walter. Forrest directly used door opening and pulled Shio in. They hid inside a pantry cupboard and waited for their target of protection. Dwayne Dantes and his guests arrived. How much do you think the 3% shares of Coin Company is worth? Bored, Forrest casually asked. In the morning, she had entered St. Samuel Cathedral with Shio to provide protection while feigning prayer. Shio hesitated and said, at least several £1,000s. The bishop seemed to place a great deal of importance on the matter. How rich donating thousands of pounds just like that? Why doesn't he save the poor like us? Forrest said poignantly as a jokingly manner. At this moment, the door of the room opened. Dwayne, Dantes, and Mach's family walked in and took their seats. The waiters also started rushing around. She and Forrest didn't speak further as they eavesdropped on this chit-chat outside as they observed the surrounding situations. From time to time, their noses would twitch because of the food fragrance. Suddenly, Shio frowned as though she had sensed something before quickly easing her brows as though nothing had happened. What's wrong? Forrest leaned in towards her friend's ears and whispered. Shio shook her head. Nothing, I was uptight, causing me to overreact. At that moment, the client put down his fork and knife, glancing to the sun with a normal expression. In his eyes, which was his spirit vision, activated a blonde red eyed head had appeared out of the void. In its mouth was a thick letter. Klein faintly caught the scent of milk, wheat, and fish. It's a mushroom. The corners of his mouth twitched as he secretly... Wait, are we eating it? The corners of his mouth twitched as he secretly reached out his left hand to grab the letter, and sitting in the other 3 seats, Mach, Rihanna, and Hazel didn't notice anything. Klein stuffed the letter into his pocket without anyone noticing as a waiter walked out of the pantry, serving a new dish to 4 customers. Among the dishes, 2 of them were buttered fried mushrooms. Upon seeing the scene, Klein suddenly felt disgusted. His expression turned odd as his left palm that remained in his pocket trembled. What the fuck? All right, next chapter, Runaway Horse, chapter 860. Chapter 860 is called Runaway Horse. Exactly, man. I wasted my teenager years. I should have been making avatar content and buying Bitcoin. Damn. Chapter 860 is called Runaway Horse. Thankfully, it's not a restroom. The dish I ordered, or else it would have been a waste of a dish, despite believing that he no longer... This sentence is tripping me up. Despite believing that he no longer affected by the trauma inflicted upon him by the mushrooms, the smell that came with the letter successfully made him suffer a relapse. He's relapsing? Suffer a relapse. Klein's expression rapidly restored itself as he wrenched his left hand and placed it on the cup of the side, drinking the ice water inside. Please give me another cup. As though nothing had happened, he turned his head and instructed the waiter who was at the door. At the same time, he pressed on his clothes and slowly got up while expressing his apologies before heading for a bathroom attracted to the powder room. It was opposite of the pantry, placed on either side of the main door. Hiding in a cupboard, Forge heard footsteps approaching the bathroom door, open as she closed. She couldn't help but lean into Shield's ear and whisper in amusement. It's the second time. They've been here for slightly more than 30 minutes, and Dwayne Dantes has already gone to the washroom twice. The first time was clear to pee. If it's for the same reason, it means that this gentleman's kidney bladders or prostate is problematic. He's coming out. He's really only peeing. Tisk, he seems to drink plenty of water usually and often heads to the bathroom. Sigh, it's difficult being TYCOON, but it's even more difficult being good-looking TYCOON in particular. What? She thinks he's good-looking? But it's even more difficult being a good-looking TYCOON in particular. Shira rolled her eyes. What has that got to do with you? Focus and be serious. We're on a mission. Also, the bodyguard of the member of parliament named Mach seemed pretty strong. He's probably beyond her. We need to be careful. Forrest had no choice but to suppress her desire to chat as she shrank back. They're guarding the area outside without being wary of others passing through the wall. How unprofessional. All right, we'll chat when we're back. At that moment, Klein had returned to the table and sat back in his seat. He drank a mouthful of ice water, sipped some of the ice wine, and stared to Mach with a smile. Having been here in a backland for nearly 2 months, I've been busy getting used to the environment and hadn't found the time to start a new business. Every day I wake up seeing money flowing out without coming in. It's about time I do something. He indicated his willingness to participate in the arms deal by cracking a joke. Mach stroked his cup and said with a warm smile, I can empathize with that. In the beginning, I was in such a stage as well. How much money do you have to spare? I can introduce you to some friends for a partnership. Klein replied in a calm tone, I'll be able to spare a maximum 20,000 pounds at present. You're richer than I imagined, Mach said with a heartfelt sigh. Under normal circumstances, a TYCOON has a liquidity of 20,000 pounds was definitely someone whose overall wealth was on order of 100,000 pounds. Not giving Dwayne Dantes a chance to humble, he casually said, didn't you buy 3% of Coin Company shares before? You can pledge it for at least 10,000 pounds. They will give you some liquidity. Klein immediately smiled inside. I have already donated those shares to the church. I plan to establish a bureaucracy foundation that's targeted at the poor. You donated it to the church? Mach had yet to meet the priests or bishops of St. Samuel Cathedral today. Furthermore, he had been out and had yet to receive the invitation. Therefore, he wasn't aware of the new development. Ma'am, Rihanna, and Hazel, who were enjoying the delicious foods, looked up as well, subconsciously casting their gaze on Dwayne Dantes. At their level, it wasn't uncommon to have friends they knew they could donate 10,000 pounds, but very few donate that much in one go. And among these few people, they might not even be the ones who are willing to donate such amounts. No, there is one now, Dwayne Dantes. Yes, Klein nodded with his usual expression. If not for the goddess's blessings, I would have long died in the chaotic southern continent. And when I was young, if I had the chance to attend school and study, perhaps my life would have been completely different. Thus, I wish to give those children who desire to change their fates some hope. Your character is amazing, as your generosity. Rihanna lowered her cutlery and praised sincerity. Hazel also nodded indiscriminately. The way she looked at Dwayne Dantes turned significantly gentler. Seeing her parents being in idle conversation over the charity, she excused herself and walked to the bathroom, seemingly pressing her right hand onto her abdomen. When she arrived at the door, she was just about to turn right when she suddenly turned her head and looked at the cupboard beside the pantry. She frowned silently and revealed a look of confusion before retracting her gaze and opening the washroom's wooden door. When Hazel came out after washing her hands, she had apparently forgotten the abnormality that had happened, and she touched the necklace at her chest and returned to the dining table. She touched her stomach and then forgot? What? Okay, let's keep reading. Dinner came to an end after the dishes and desserts were served. The four left the private room and met the two bodyguards outside with the servants. They were preparing to return home. At this moment, Hazel suddenly paused and said, "I think I dropped my ear studs inside. Sorry about that. Please wait a moment." What is gonna happen? Without waiting for Madame Rianne to instruct the waitress to do a search, Hazel turned around and circled around to bend around the room she had been in. However, Hazel lowered her hand that held her left ear and directly entered the connected pantry until she was in front of the cupboard. She then placed her hand on it. She had planned on opening the door to the cupboard at an extremely fast speed, but after some thought, she decided to be cautious by holding on to her necklace with one hand and turning her body sideways to prevent any sudden attacks from whatever was inside. An attack? As she held her breath, Hazel took the chance when the waiter was clearing the table and decided to suddenly pull the door open, exposing whatever was inside. However, apart from some spare cutlery in the tablecloth, there was nothing. Hazel once again wore a look of puzzlement as though she couldn't believe the scene before her eyes. "I clearly sensed something very valuable inside," she muttered underneath her breath and quickly closed the door before her maidservant chased up to her and walked out of the pantry. Outside the Intis Srenzo restaurant, Forrest and Shio turned their heads simultaneously and looked inside. That girl actually... Oh, she noticed them! That girl actually noticed us. Forrest whispered in disbelief and amazement. If she... Oh! Was this live? Oh, shit. What's up, dude? I'm gonna go say... Let's go say what's up. Forrest whispered in disbelief and amazement. If she hadn't used door opening and sneaked out of the back of the cupboard, she and Shio would have been discovered, having no choice but to admit that they were secretly protecting Dwayne Dantes. Shio wore a confused look as well. "I remember that you didn't speak or move about when she was heading to the washroom. Perhaps she's a beyonder as well and has a certain type of spiritual intuition." Forrest made an uncertain guess. Mr. Dwayne Dantes sure leads a difficult life. He often encounters the powerful strugglers between tycoons and nobles while having a butler that secretly studies black magic at home. Furthermore, there's a beyonders with mysterious powers living nearby. By the way, what's her name? Hazel. Shio was looking for Dwayne Dantes' carriage, perhaps to hide underneath, when her gaze suddenly froze. Forrest, look, that person is acting oddly. Forrest traced her gaze and saw a middle-aged man in a black formal suit. He was pacing along the side of the street, looking very anxious and frustrated. How is he acting oddly? Forrest didn't have the time to observe him carefully as she directly asked. Shio answered simply, "He dressed as a decent gentleman, but his shoes are very dirty. It's as though he hasn't shined them in a while. As you know, Backlund is covered in dust. Also, he would touch the area underneath his armpit. I dare bet that there's an underarm holster hidden there. Apart from that, his expression and attitude imply that he isn't normal. Huh? They're coming out soon. I'll head to the carriage first. Watch the person, ensure that Mr. Dantes is protected." Alright, as Forrest found it troublesome, she also found it rather interesting. Hence, she returned to an area that concealed her as she observed the entrance of Intis Srinzo restaurant. Nearly 30 seconds later, Dwayne Dantes and Mach's family walked out. After bidding each other farewell, they headed for their respective carriages. At this moment, a two-wheeled carriage charged out from the end of the street at an extremely fast speed, as though it would topple at any moment. Oh wait, that's the title drop with the horse, right? The horse that pulled the carriage wore a rabid look in its eyes as though it had been alarmed. It charged for Intis Srin's restaurant entrance in a panic. Okay, what a coincidence. Of Mach's two bodyguards, one went forward in the bid to subdue the runaway horse, while the other protected the member of parliament and family. At this moment, the middle-aged man who had been loitering around had approached it from the back and drew a revolver with a warped expression. He aimed at Mach's head. Whoa! What? At this moment, the middle-aged man who had been loitering around had approached from the back and drew a revolver with a warped expression. He aimed at Mach's head. Klein's right hand was raised indiscriminately before he retracted it without doing anything. He nimbly performed a jump, dodging the runaway horse. At the same time, Ford, who was hiding elsewhere, clenched her palm gently and pulled to the side. The assailant's legs suddenly went limp as though he had stumbled over something and fell to the ground, failing to pull the trigger. Okay, we got him. In his haste, he pressed down with one hand and immediately leaped up, planning to shoot wildly without aiming. However, when he squeezed the finger, he didn't feel any tactful feeling. The revolver had already been dropped by Hazel's feet. Damn, Hazel the Marauder. Look at that. She stole it, right? He gonna get JFK? Dude, we literally, it's like, Mason, what do the numbers mean? Literally, we just stopped Mason, dude. The revolver had already dropped from Hazel's feet, following that he and a runaway horse was subdued by the bodyguards. Sorry, that's probably like an Unk reference right there, if you haven't played Black Ops. Why did you attempt to assault me? Monch held back his churning emotions as he took a step forward and asked with a deep voice. The middle-aged man immediately laughed as he shouted with a hysterical expression, "It's you, it's all because of you and the others. You talk about atmospheric pollution and wanting things like anthracite. My factory is going bankrupt, my child is dying from an illness, and my wife has committed unaliving." That's sad. All right, next chapter. Chapter 861 is called Forest Stream. Upon hearing the middle-aged man shout and seeing his warped expression, Hazel's eyes, which were filled with rage and hatred, gradually froze before melting into a confused and lost. It wasn't only her, Mach and Rianne, as well as Dwayne Dantes fell silent. No one spoke for a moment. Even Forrest, who had concealed herself, also lost the sense of excitement she originally had, no longer having a strong sense of justice. After more than 10 seconds, Mach stopped looking at his assailant and turned his head to say to his bodyguards, "One of you stay here, watch the scene and the suspect, wait for the police." Having said that, he paused and said to his valet, "Get a few reporters to cover this matter." After preliminarily dealing with this matter, the House of Commons members of Parliament surveyed the area and discovered that several passerbys were attempting to gather over to check on what was happening. He then looked at Dwayne Dantes and apologized with a smile. "My apologies for putting you in such danger. I never expected the matter to develop this way. We did consider the actual situation of similar factory owners and coal suppliers, and we have provided them some assistance and interim measures. Who knew? Coming up with a bill is something, but actual implementation is an entirely different matter. When atmospheric pollution becomes abnormally pressing and the various parties exert immense stress, it is no surprise that a cookie-cutter solution is employed." Klein sighed and said with self-deprecating laugh, "There's no need to keep my feelings into the consideration. I have been in even more dangerous situations in the past." On the surface, it appeared as though he was referring to his encounters when doing business in the southern continent's West Ballum. In fact, he had recalled Magoose, who was pregnant with an evil god spawn, the terrifying meteor that had crashed down from the sky, Cynthia, who wanted to bear a child for Admiral Amiris, and the Rose School of Thought, Angel, and numinous Episcopate monster who had collapsed the mountain outside Bayam. Compared to these, what had happened here was like a drizzle. He didn't even need to consider his own safety since there was Shio, Miss Magician, and Hazel. He didn't even take action besides dodging normally like an experienced adventurer would do. Cookie cutter, not a word. Yeah, cookie cutter is definitely not a word I think would come up in this series. His focus was on whether this would result in storm. Mach sighed and nodded. "I can tell that you're very calm. I once doubted your experiences, but now I'm convinced. All right, Dwayne, let's return home separately. Let's leave the rest of the police. If there's a need to take a statement, they will do it at your residence." Klein nodded and said to Mosh and family, "Be safe." Mosh nodded seriously and sighed once again. Backland's social seasons has just begun, and this happened. Cherish the peace we have now. Backland's social season is marked by the return of the House of the Lords of Members Parliament. It seems to have begun since last weekend, and this weekend the two cases that happened consecutively, the harm dealt by Baron Singers and the assault of the Member of Parliament Moch. As he thought Klein didn't stay put, he brought Richardson, who clearly looked a little shaken, and walked towards his carriage. When he got into it, he watched the scenery fly backwards as he sighed and half closed his eyes. He was presently unable to determine if the assault hadn't evolved beyond our powers, as everything that had happened could be done by ordinary people. As for the middle-aged man, he had sufficient reason to do so. They didn't need to deliberate fabricating, as Klein believed that in Backland, at present, there were more than one former factory owner of the employer that had lost their livelihood because of a similar development. The only thing that felt questionable was that Moch was the target, although the House of Commons were the supporters. Advocates of the environmental measures often make relevant speeches and are interweaved by the papers. He wasn't the most obvious target during the pass of the bill, and so maybe this is a setup. In comparison, there was a higher chance that the members of the National Atmospheric Pollution Council were picked as targets for revenge. Klein leaned on the carriage wall as he slowly opened his eyes, seeing that it was already dark and cloudy with rain already pattering down Pattering down, once again, he realized how the maelstrom hidden beneath the seemingly calm background surface was intensifying. Reining in his thoughts, Klein raised his left palm and tapped his pocket. In it was what he believed to be Frank Lee's reply and some unknown mushrooms. Klein really yearned to return home, to head above the gray fog and use the newly received mushrooms to communicate with creeping hunger. Doing so to regain the use of sealed artifact with the storm already brewing, he believed that there was a need for him to quickly return back to his optimal combat strength. And in that aspect, creaking hunger was essential. Unfortunately, he had 2 Beyonder bodyguards following him, so it was best if he didn't head above the gray fog for the time being. I clearly don't need any protection, but I spent a few £100s to hire 2 people to restrict my actions. How helpless I am as a tycoon. Klein finally sighed inwardly as he raised the cup of black tea he had just been prepared by Richardson. He took a sip of the facial muscles tensed up before relaxing. Klein looked down and discovered that there had been twice the number of lemon slices in the black tea than usual. He glanced at Richardson in an unnoticeable manner, and he saw that his valet was in daze, as though he was lost in the horror of the assault. As cowardly as usual, Klein commented inwardly as he placed a porcelain cup on the table. Late at night, 39 Buckland Street, Member of Parliament Motch's house. Hazel sat before her dress table looking at the gray rat sitting on the powder box. After a long silence, she said, "Was my father wrong? The matter he pushed for is clearly a good thing. There's nothing that is beneficial to everyone. There will always be those who benefit and those who suffer from it. At such times, a relevant bill or plan requires thought, compensation, and aid. If your father has done them, the problem isn't his. Conversely, it also means that he's cold and ruthless." The rat said perfunctorily. Hazel recalled for a few seconds and relaxed her expression. During this time, I sensed that there was something very valuable hidden inside the cupboard in the pantry, but when I later got an opportunity to open it, there was nothing. The rat was taken aback as it said and thought, perhaps that was Dwayne Thompson's bodyguard. He was recently embroiled in a suicide case, and it said that it involves Baron Sindros. Hiring a bodyguard to protect him in secret is normal. The bodyguard inside the cupboard might also possess supernatural powers, carrying mystical items with them. That's why you were able to sense it. Hazel nodded gently and accepted the explanation before subconsciously muttering to himself, I wonder what kinds of supernatural powers those bodyguards have. After saying that, she swept the gray rat with a puzzled look. How do you know that Dwayne Thompson wasn't embroiled in a troublesome matter? The rat squeaked. My present state is very suitable for me to eavesdrop into the conversations of others. As it spoke, it looked in the direction of 160 Buckland Street, the glint in its eyes shimmering. Based on the sleeping rotation, Forrest was asleep as she felt herself float to an ancient and majestic castle. I'm sorry, what? In it were all kinds of beyond ingredients and mystical items. There were even 2 blurry tarot cards. However, she didn't take any of them away, and she was sealed by an invisible force field. Forrest looked around in an attempt to find the means to remove the seal. Finally, she saw the complicated symbol drawn at the top of the dome. It was a symbol that forms from fate and concealment. If I find an item engraved with this symbol, I'll be able to unseal some treasure. Forrest immediately came to realization when she snapped awake. What was this? Wait, what dream is this? What is this? She discovered that she had curled into a ball on the carpet in the room. She had a thin silk blanket covering her. She and Shield didn't dare sleep in a reclining chair, afraid that Dwayne Thompson, who'd often sat in it, would notice something indifferent. Rubbing the edges of her brows, Forrest sat up and saw Shield having her back to the wall of the master bedroom. She was seriously listening for any stirrings. As Forrest walked to Shield, she said with a frown, I feel that there is some secret hidden here. I had a strange dream, dreaming of an exaggerated treasure trove and a complicated symbol. Okay. It was just a random dream she had. Let me read this part after we refreshed our page. I feel that there is some secret hidden in here. I had a strange dream, dreaming of an exaggerated treasure trove and a complicated symbol. As an astrologer, she instinctively believed that there was a problem with her dream. Noticing that serious look on Forrest's face, she suppressed her words of doubt and said after some thought, perhaps there really is some sort of secret. I once heard a proverb regarding the mysterious world. It goes, when a beyonder element is discovered somewhere, there must be a second one. Ignoring the butler who can't tell if he possesses beyonder powers or not, that Miss Hazel is someone with a beyonder element around her, or should I say that this street likely has a second one. Forrest nodded gently before laughing. However, it has nothing to do with us. You will receive our remunition tomorrow evening and terminate this bodyguard mission. We will leave this place, the most pitiful of all Dwayne Dantes. He's innocent and ordinary, but he ends up involved with troublesome matters and beyonder elements. If only they knew. Having said that, Forrest looked at Shio and joked, Quick, quickly wish him that the goddess would watch over him. I'm a believer of the goddess of sea machinery. I won't be able to do so. Shio seriously considered for 2 seconds before drawing a crimson moon on her chest, piously muttering, "May the goddess bless Mr. Dwayne Dantes." Dwayne's pitiful and ordinary. If only they knew, dude. Oh, shit. Forrest was snapped out of her reverie as she covered her mouth and yawned. I'll head out of the patrol building. Me yawn never. I'll head out to patrol the building. It's your turn to sleep after another 15 minutes. Alright, Shio was clearly more awake than Forrest. Forrest immediately headed for the door and pressed onto the wall with her outstretched hand. Arriving at the corridor, she was just about to walk to the staircase when she sensed that there was a slight stir coming from the room with Dwayne Dantes' valet. Forrest's eyes started slightly as she cautiously headed over. She opened a tiny door in the wall and peeped in. She then saw Richardson jump a crazy dance that had a tinge of mystery. A spirit dance. Doesn't this valet believe in the everyday goddess? He's secretly worshipping death. Forrest, he's doing a spirit dance? Forrest frowned as she watched Richardson finish his spirit dance, softly praying for Death's protection to help him avoid all kinds of danger. I don't remember Death. After everything came to an end, Forrest tisk as shook her head. She silently said to herself, "What a pitiful man, Mr. Dantes." Mr. Dantes. Oh shit, dude. Oh, I feel like Klein is gonna get a hint to Death through his butler. Okay, I feel like Butler Walter would actually low-key give him a hint behind Death. What a coincidence. I think not. All right, let's keep reading. Chapter 862 is called Kind Warning. After returning to the room with the balcony, Forrest looked at Shio, who had her back against the wall, and whispered, "Guess what I saw? That male servant Dante's valet is actually a believer of death. He was a dancing spirit. He was dancing a spirit dance and praying." Shio widened her eyes before relaxing her expression. When it comes to Mr. Dantes, that's the least of his concerns. Yeah, the valet renamed Richardson is clearly of the southern continent heritage. Perhaps he was born there, so it's not surprising that he worships deaths. Forrest replied with a smile. I know, I just find it interesting. Aren't there a little too many people with secrets around Dwayne Dantes? I woke up surprised if I were to discover one day that all the living beings in this building except him, including the housekeeper, maids, gardeners, carriage drivers, earthworm, bugs, and rats, are related to the mystery and the Beyonders. About a little bit. I would be able to easily accept the reality. Shia rolled her eyes. If that were the case, Mr. Dwayne Dantes definitely wouldn't be a simple person. Having Beyonders and supernatural creatures around him means that he might be the spawn of an evil god or the grounded angel. Waiting for Forrest to expand the scope of the conversation, Shio asked, "Didn't you say that you had a strange dream involving treasure? Why aren't you curious about considering what it symbolizes? Perhaps it might actually exist." Forrest chuckled. "Such a dream often implies trouble and danger. I'll consider it again if I have a chance of encountering the symbol." Although she said that, her true thoughts were, there's quite a bit of problem with that dream. Who knows if there's a ploy behind it. I'll consult Mr. Hangman, Ma'am Hermit, and Mr. World at the Tarot Gathering next week before deciding what to do. They are experienced and powerful Beyonders. Perhaps they have had similar experiences. You've matured. She nodded and exerted strength in her back. She bounced off the wall and walked to the spot where Forrest had been sleeping before. Mature. Forrest scoffed and leaned in towards her friend. She straightened her back and looked down at her friend's hair. Without waiting for Shio to become enraged, she sighed. "You're the one who matured. I still remember this time last year. You did things based on instinct, arbitrating with your fist. From time to time, you would commit mistakes without realizing it and become lost. You're much better now. They've come such a long way, dude." Shio was stunned as she lay down as she covered herself with a thin silk blanket. With her face facing forward, she grumbled, "The main reason why I got lost was because of you being a burden by my side." Forrest chortled and nodded and thought, "That's a characteristic of apprentice. It has nothing to do with me. Get it?" Seeing Shio on the floor, she walked to the wall adjacent to the master bedroom and seriously started being a bodyguard. As the night slowly passed, the sky gradually lit up. Klein got up to have breakfast and received visits from the 2 batches of the policemen and a batch of reporters. They were here for further investigations regarding Ariane's unaliving case, while another was to obtain more details regarding the Member of Parliament Malch's assault. With Walter's help, Dwayne Dantes met them and quickly handled the matter. In the afternoon, Malch suddenly visited and urged Klein, joining the club for a game of tennis. He was a member of a few clubs, but there were only one club that overlapped with Dwayne Dantes' East Ball Military Veterans Mess. This is to confirm the arms deal. Klein managed to read between the lines and immediately got Richardson to get his coat, top hat, and cane. He rode in the carriage and headed for the sandy yellow unique building at Hillston Borough with the Member of Parliament. They entered the club and used the same room as before. Klein once again met the long-faced army colonial from the Ministry of Defense, Calvin. After habitually exchanging pleasantries for a few minutes, Calvin finally focused on the main topic at hand. He looked at Dwayne Dantes and said with a chuckle, "I heard from Motched that you can have 20,000 pounds available, although it will make me tight on funds. If it's true, I can." Klein replied with a smile. Calvin nodded in satisfaction and said after some pondering, "There won't be any need for 20,000 pounds for now. The batch of firearms, explosives, and small number of cannons reserved for you is in particular warehouse in East Ballum. There's not that much, enough to equip about 3 to 4,000 people. Damn! Based on the price of decommissioning them, it will cost 10,000 pounds at most. Of course, you will have to give me 15,000 pounds. He didn't mince his words in any way, as though this was common in the low and military. No problem, Klein said as he nodded calmly. Calvin immediately chuckled. Excellent, Mach has a keen eye for people. A person who wants to do such business absolutely mustn't be stingy. The batch of firearms is worth at least 20,000 pounds in West Ballum. If you can find suitable buyers and fully showcase your experience in the area, it's entirely possible to sell them for 30,000 pounds or even more. By the way, the transportation fees and escort fees will be borne by you. We will be only to send 2 or 3 personnel to assist you. As expected, Dorby monitors. Klein listened in silence, believing that it was time that he urged Admiral Stars and the Nids to quickly provide him with information on West Ballum. Dwayne, the Lord of the War arc? That's literally what's going on right now, dude. He pondered for a moment and said, roughly when will it begin? The batch of firearms will take another 2 weeks before being placed in the corresponding warehouse. When it happens, after the period is up to you, you don't have to pay it in full at once. You can first pay 8,000 pounds to 10,000 pounds and pay the rest when everything is settled. Calvin wore an expression as though things were highly negotiable. 2 weeks later, that will be closer to the end of the month. I'll definitely have to wait until the party of the Snake of Fate's birthday before leaving. I'm still waiting for the placenta blood. Klein's thoughts raced as he said, I'll need to carry out some preparatory work. I'll probably head to the southern continent in early July. Calvin and Mach exchanged looks with Mach and gently rubbed his palms. No problem. Outside of East Ballum military, veterans Mess, Shio, and Force hid themselves on the roof of a nearby building, monitoring the people that were coming and going. Shio knew that there were many Beyonders in the club. She didn't dare to get forced to sneak her in to provide protection of the Dwayne Dantes at a close distance. All they did was wait outside. Thankfully, this is Backland. Even though there is no smog this season, there'd be no lack of clouds. The sun wouldn't be too strong, otherwise my skin would definitely turn red. Forrest mumbled as she hid herself in the shadows. Shio was about to say something when she saw a carriage drive into the back door of the club. It was entirely brown in color and had a trademark coat of arms. It was made of flowers and rings. Viscount Stratford carriage, Shio soundly mumbled as he hurriedly widened her eyes and focused. She then saw a familiar figure who was a stranger to her get off the carriage. Suddenly, my bodyguard, the figure entering East Ballum's military veterans mess. What's wrong? Force noticed her friend's abnormality. Shio didn't conceal the matter as she frankly said, I saw Viscount Stratford. He also came to this club. The captain of the Royal Guards, for asked in surprise. Yes, Shio nodded heavily. Force turned to Gabe, hoping to say something, but she was at a loss as what to say. All she could do was look, pretending to monitor for anything that was amiss. After a while, she saw Dwayne Dantes walk out. 160 Bokeland Street received another guest in the afternoon. This time, it was the largest shareholder of the coin company, Ma'am Mary. I'm very sorry that the request embroiled you in such trouble. I never expected Baron Singers to do something like that. Poor Caron, he was planning on bringing his family to the Winter County for the summer. Mary Scott apologized with hints of anger. Klein replied calmly, I agree with your views of Caron. He was really unfortunate. However, this matter probably wasn't done by Baron Singers. It might be a trap that targets him. Mary nodded heavily. I've heard of the theory. It's said that the police department is planning to hire a skilled forensics pathologist to dissect the corpse to search for any missing clues. Her final sentence was automatically replaced by Klein, as the policeman department is planning to hire a skilled spirit medium from the Church of the Evernight to examine the corpse to search for any missing clues. I wonder what will be discovered. Klein raised his right hand and tapped his chest 4 times in a clockwise fashion. May the goddess give Chiron peace, and that the true murderer behind his death will suffer punishment. Mary responded in the same way before saying, in order to prevent you from being affected by this matter, I plan on purchasing the shares from you ahead of time. I'll add an additional 1,000 pounds above the highest price to date. You don't have to worry about my funds. I've recently been busy borrowing money from banks. Klein sighed and replied, I'm very grateful for your kind of intentions. but any advance transferring of the shares will need to be done with the church. I've already donated to them. I plan on using the income I received to establish a bureaucracy foundation that targets the poor. This was the first time Mary was hearing of such news. She was momentarily stunned and speechless. After 10 seconds, she exhaled and said, "Your character, generosity, and wisdom truly impressed me." As she said that, she looked at Dwayne Dantes with an additional look of admiration. Klein humbly diverted the compliment to the goddess before pausing. He then asked with stern expression, "Ma'am Mary, I have a question that I hope you can answer. When you decided to clash with Baron Sinders to protect your control over the coin company, was it purely by your own will or result of persuasion by others?" I feel like it'd be her own will. Mary frowned and frankly replied, all the persuasion that was directed at me was to ask me to give up." Klein immediately fell silent as he didn't discuss the matters further. He casually mentioned the Member of Parliament Motch's assault before sending the lady out of 160 Buckland Street. After dinner, Walter came to the half-open room with a balcony and said to his employer of the reclining chair, "Sir, the 2 bounty hunters have been dismissed. It cost a total of £300 for 3 days, excluding the food provided. They're finally gone." Klein immediately relaxed as he nodded, acknowledging his butler's reply. Following that, he eagerly entered the master bedroom, planning on taking out the mushrooms sent to him from Frank Lee and bringing them above the grey fog to communicate with creeping hunger. When he came to the desk with a sudden rushings, he saw a letter held down by the ink bottle. Klein picked it up in puzzlement to tore it open. He quickly scanned it as his expression turned odd. Is it a letter from Force and Shio? It's either like Force like, "Oh, you're a pretty handsome tycoon," or Shio's like, "Man, you have really bad luck. Dear Mr. Dantes, we are the bodyguards you hired." Okay, hold up. "Dear Mr. Dantes, we are the bodyguards you hired. In the past few days, we discovered certain matters that we feel obligated to inform you. Therefore, we entered your bedroom to leave this letter while you were having dinner." What a good bodyguard. Damn. What? Your butler might be researching black magic. Oh my god, they're literally spilling everything. That's so funny. Well, we are going to read that for sure tomorrow, potentially later tonight, after we watch Fantastic Four. Yeah, so I'm gonna have a little movie night. I'm gonna go out, watch Fantastic Four, and then when I come back, if it's not too late, I might read like 5 more chapters and keep the streak going, keep the stream going. I don't know. Potentially, we're gonna be reading tomorrow. So I don't know. I don't know just yet. Especially because I do want to watch the F1 Cup. I want to watch the Cup. So I don't know. I'll double check. I'll see. And don't forget, either I'm gonna double check one day. Either Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. It's not going to be a 24-hour stream. I mean, we could, but I will do my best to stream and read Lord of the Mysteries for as long as I can. And remember, do not tell our competitor. He doesn't need to know this. We're going to catch him by surprise, okay? This stays between you and me. Wiz thinks he has a race. I know he's currently in like 1011. 1011, wow. But it's okay. What's okay? We're gonna gain the lead. We were originally 190 chapters behind. Now we are 150 chapters behind. Press X to doubt Unhinged. Someone time him out. I'm kidding, Unhinged. I love you. Someone not fucking kidding. Point is, we're gonna make sure. And you know what, man? If it takes more than one really long stream. Yo, what? Why are my own mods pressing X? What is this blasphemy? What is going on here? What do you mean that's too many X's in chat? I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. Press A for accept. Okay, hold up. Chill, guys. Chill. You see, look, D got my back. He didn't push fucking X. That's a homie right there. All right? That is a homie. Point is, we're gonna be back potentially tonight, for sure tomorrow. B, thank you, Unhinged. You see, that's better. That's better. A, B, those are a lot better letters than X. Okay. Ew. Doubts. How dare you guys? You know what? I'm not streaming over the weekend anymore. How about that, huh? What if I just end the stream right here, right now, and don't do any overall thoughts, huh? No, I'm fucking kidding. All right, I'm gonna end stream. Quick recap. I like what we're reading. Volume 4 is so far, hands down, most likely, 100% sure, the best volume. It's just so good. Press X to doubt. No. Up, down, down, left, right, left, B, A star. We'll see what happens. All right. You guys have a beautiful day. This is an amazing volume, and we are going to resume it on Friday and either Saturday, Sunday, and definitely Monday. Peace. And have a beautiful, gorgeous day. And don't forget, praise the fool, and I will see you guys all very soon. Peace. Peace out. Peace out.